sleep, there's one thing on my mind. The maker of all the universe is on my side. And if God is for me, who can be against me? God is for me. Who can be against me? He is my strength, he is my friend forever. God is for me. Who can be against me? When I just don't understand, God is for me. When life doesn't go the way I planned, God is for me. When I just don't understand, God is for me. When life doesn't go the way I planned, God is for me. If God is for me, who can be against me? God is for me. Who can be against me? He is my strength, he is my friend forever. God is for me. Who can be against me? God is for me. Who can be against me?
Respect is showing others they are important by what you say and do. We all know how good it feels when someone shows respect to us and makes us feel important. We've also seen how people might not show respect, especially out on the road, which is why we have a road theme to help us rev up the respect this month. When we respect others, we show them that they are valuable and important. Each person is valuable because each of us is made in the image of God. We've experienced God's love and kindness for ourselves, and that moves us to respect others. It's like our memory verse for this month tells us, do to others as you want them to do to you. Let's learn that one together with some actions. Do. We're going to take our hands and make C cups, turn them over, and just kind of shuffle them in front of you like you're doing something, right? Do. To others. So you're going to make 2 thumbs up, and then tip your right hand over your left, and then make it like your thumbs are friends running circles around each other. To others. So we have do to others as you, point you, want them. So put your hands out with your palms up and make your hands bend into a little claw shape and pull them towards you. Want them. Do to others as you want them to do, make those do hands again, to you. Wow, that was a lot easier than last month's. Let's put it all together. Do to others as you want them to do to you. And that's all found in Luke 6:31. Let's say it a little bit faster all together. Do to others as you want them to do to you. Luke 6:31. Sometimes it can be hard to be respectful to others. We might feel tired or grumpy, or maybe we just think the other person doesn't deserve our respect. But remember, God is always with us, and God can help us to choose to show respect, even when it's difficult. Let's sing this song about how God helps us learn and grow.
When I am scared of what I don't know, when I'm afraid, thinking I'm alone, you remind me that I still belong. God, you help me to grow. When I am scared, I don't feel strong. When I'm afraid, something is wrong. You remind me that you're in control. of what I don't know. When I'm afraid, thinking I'm alone, you remind me that I still belong. Oh yeah, God, you help me to grow. When I am scared, I don't feel strong. When I'm afraid, something is wrong. You remind me that you're in control. Oh God, you teach me to know I am learning. You make me so courageous. You make me curious. There is so much you have given, so much to explore. You're teaching me I'm gonna be a better me. God, you're helping me to be better and you're teaching me to grow. God, you're helping me to be better and you're teaching me, and I am learning. You make me so courageous. You make me curious. There is so much you have given, so much to explore. You're teaching me I'm gonna be a better me. Make me so courageous. You make me curious. There is so much you have given, so much to explore. You're teaching me I'm gonna be a better me.
All this year, we've been making our way through God's big story, the Bible. We've seen how God created the world and everything in it, including people. But people turned away from God. But God had a plan to make things right again. God's plan was to send Jesus to be the Savior of the world. When Jesus grew up, he was baptized in the Jordan River. God spoke from heaven, saying, "This is my Son, and I love him. I am very pleased with him." After Jesus was baptized, he spent 40 days in the desert. Then he began to go from town to town, teaching and healing people. Now, even though Jesus is God's Son, he didn't just spend his time with people who were considered important, like the religious leaders. Instead, Jesus met with ordinary, everyday people on hillsides and by the lakeshore. And Jesus chose some of the most unlikely people to be his closest friends and followers. Jesus chose regular, ordinary fishermen, Peter, James, and John. When you read the story in the book of Luke, Peter is called Simon, but he was known by both names, Simon and Peter. These men were just out doing their job. They weren't people who would be thought of as important or popular. In a way, they were left out. One morning, after a long night of fishing, Peter and his friends had caught exactly 0 fish. But also on this particular morning, they weren't alone on the beach. Jesus was standing on the lakeshore, and though it was early, a huge crowd had gathered. The people were eager to hear what Jesus had to say. So Jesus climbed into the boat that belonged to Peter. He told Peter to go out a little way from the shore. Jesus then sat down and continued to teach the crowds. When he was done, he spoke to Peter again, saying, "Go out into deep water. Let down the nets so you can catch some fish." Now, I'm sure Peter was confused by Jesus' request. After all, he and his friends had been fishing all night, and they hadn't caught anything. But Peter did as Jesus said. He went out into the deep water and set out the fishing nets. And the nets filled with so many fish that they began to burst. Peter motioned to James and John to bring their boat over too. Together they began to pull in all the fish, but both boats were so full of fish that they began to sink. Oh no! Peter realized just how powerful Jesus really was. He didn't feel worthy to be near Jesus. He knew that he wasn't perfect. He threw himself down at Jesus' feet and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." Jesus reassured Peter by saying, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." Right away, Peter, James, and John hauled their boats up on shore and left everything to follow Jesus. Jesus had included these ordinary, probably smelly, fishermen as his close friends and disciples. Jesus wasn't finished calling his disciples. One day, he stopped at a booth where a man named Levi was collecting taxes. Levi also had two names. Sometimes he was known as Levi, but he's also known as Matthew, which is what we'll call him today. Now you've got to understand, no one talked to a tax collector unless they had to. These men were hired to collect taxes from their own people for the Roman government, the enemies. They would charge extra and keep it for themselves. Tax collectors like Matthew were definitely left out because they were not popular with the people. But Jesus walked right up to Matthew at his tax booth and said, "Follow me." Jesus wanted Matthew to be included. Sure enough, Matthew got up from his tax booth and left everything to follow Jesus. Matthew was so excited that he even invited Jesus to come to a dinner party at his house. At Matthew's home, Jesus shared a meal with tax collectors and some others who were seen as outcasts. The religious leaders were shocked. They complained to Jesus' disciples, asking them, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus answered them this way, "Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. I have not come to get those who think they are right with God to follow me. I have come to get sinners to turn away from their sins." Jesus wasn't worried about what other people thought. He chose to include everyone, even people who weren't considered important. Jesus chose to spend his time with people who saw how much they needed him, instead of those like the religious leaders who thought they were too good and too important to need help. Jesus showed us how we can do this. Include people who are left out. Jesus chose to include people who others overlooked. From people like fishermen to tax collectors, Jesus chose them to be his closest friends, his disciples. Include people who are left out. Like Jesus did, we can show others that they're important with our words and our actions. That might look like inviting the new kid to sit with you on the bus. It could be picking the kid with the broken arm to be on your team in gym. Or maybe it looks like including your little brother or sister when your friends are over to hang out and play video games. Include people who are left out. It can help to think about how it feels when you're the one who's left out. Just remember what we always say here. I should treat others the way I want to be treated. That will help you know how to include people who are left out. Include people who are left out. Say that with me. Include people who are left out. What a great way to start figuring out how to treat others with respect. Let's head to small group and chat some more about it. Have a great week.